let's get started here as folks are continuing to join. I want to thank you for attending today for this important discussion. This is the third webinar in the Board of Trade's Racial and Social Equity series. It's produced in partnership with Grads of Life and sponsored by Cigna, Comcast, and EY. The purpose of the series is to help the greater Washington business community be an agent of change. We must both understand the root causes of racial and social inequity and take concrete, meaningful actions within our own organizations and across the region. And by doing so, we will all benefit. Today, Grads of Life is here to help begin making a talent plan focused on results. Grads of Life is a national leader in helping companies adopt inclusive talent management practices. And they will review many of those practices so you'll know how to build a more diverse and inclusive organization. Dwight Powery, National Site Director for Year Up, and Krysta Sadowski, Director of Advisory Services at Grads of Life, will lead the presentation. We'll also hear from Zuzana Steen from Micron and Camille from Bank of America on their experiences with these inclusive talent management practices. We're so glad to have them here as case studies for these important concepts. Once again, I want to thank Cigna, our presenting sponsor, Comcast, our executive sponsor, and EY, our supporting sponsor. This important programming wouldn't be possible without this support. So with that, let's get started, and I'll turn things over to Krysta and Dwight. Thank you all so much.
Great, thanks so much, Jack. We're so delighted to be partnering with the Board of Trade on this important series, and welcome and good morning to everybody that's tuning in. A big thank you also to our sponsors, Cigna, Comcast, and EY. We're just so grateful for the partnership in this incredible work. As Jack mentioned, my name is Krysta Sadowski, and I'm a Director of Advisory Services for Grads of Life. At Grads of Life, we consult with employers to really help them build more equitable and inclusive companies and really look at those pieces around hiring, advancing, and retaining opportunity talent. And I should also mention before we dive in that Grads of Life is an initiative that's founded within our parent organization, the nonprofit Year Up, and we work very closely together on our shared mission towards closing the opportunity divide. And we've really had the opportunity through this work to see firsthand the critical role that business can play in ending systemic racism and advancing equity in our country, in the DMV, through employment and employment practices. So we're really excited to be with you all today, kind of knowing what a critical role your companies can play in creating a better America for us all. So with that, I am delighted to have my colleague Dwight Powery here with me today. He's the Senior Director of Advisory Services for Grads of Life, and just brings a wealth of knowledge on these topics. He's been on, I'd say, kind of both sides of the coin, starting his career in the private sector with over 20 years of executive leadership experience, and we are just so grateful to have him as a part of our Grads of Life and broader Year Up family. So welcome, Dwight. We will be hearing from him very shortly. Today's webinar, as Jack mentioned, is the third in a series, and we will continue to build upon some of the themes that were touched on previously. But if this is your first time joining us, welcome, and have no fear, we'll get you caught up, and it'll be really easy to jump right in. The goals for our session today, we're going to provide a really quick refresh on the opportunity divide and the value of opportunity employment, so you'll know kind of what these terms we're kind of throwing around mean. We're going to look at some of the benefits more deeply of becoming an opportunity employer and what some of the positive impacts have been for companies. We're going to introduce 6 opportunity employment principles, which are really grounded around helping employers better hire, advance, and retain opportunity talent, and really provide a hands-on framework for you all to leave here with today. And then we're going to dig in and look at some case studies, hear from our fabulous panelists. I'm so delighted that we've got Zuzana from Micron and Camille from Bank of America, who we'll be hearing from shortly. And we're really going to hear what it looks like to put these principles into practice
Hey, Dwight, while Krysta's having some internet trouble there, do you want to maybe just get us started a little bit and kind of lead off the conversation?
Sure, sure. I was about to jump in. So and she'll be back in a second. So I want to just review some, hi, everybody. My name is Dwight Powery, as Krysta and Jack mentioned. And so to help us get the most of our time today, just want to offer up some norms to the group. Assume good intent and recognize the impact. It's okay not to agree. It's not okay to blame or shame oneself or others. Please practice both and thinking. And this is, this is, I'll explain a little more about that one, that, it's really a journey, this whole process that we're going through. And we know that it's not built in a day, but it starts today. And so we invite you to soak in today's sessions, to start thinking about like, what are some things that your company is already doing, as well as some things that they can start to do. And as it mentions in the last point, is today is a starting point. So let's just dive straight in. So this is an incredibly important statement. Talent is equally distributed among people. Opportunity is not. When I think about like my career and how I started, a lot of people took chances on me, even though they didn't know what I could perform or what I could do, but they knew that I had the talent to be able to do it, just didn't have the opportunity. And I think that exists for opportunity talent as well. So that is core to what Grads of Life is focused on. Grads of Life is focused on how do we provide opportunity to those underrepresented young adults because they have the right skills and the right talent. Next slide. You might have seen this before, and this is a refresher from the last session. On one side, we have 71 million Americans who basically have the skills, but are not, don't have the opportunity. And yes, yet they face many systemic barriers, which often block them from accessing good jobs and economic mobility. On the right side, we have workplace experience and life experience to translate into good middle skills jobs. And so what we have in between is what we call the opportunity divide. Consequently, many of these talented individuals are stuck in low wage roles with little chance of advancement, while businesses simultaneously suffer from unfulfilled positions and trying to find and fill that right talent. So this is the key of the heart of the opportunity divide. So what do we do with that? You can go to the next slide. These are the steps in order to build a bridge to the opportunity divide. It's called the Opportunity Employment Principles. We're going to dive a lot deeper into that. And Krysta, I see you back. I don't know if you want me to continue or if you want to jump in. You can go ahead and jump in if you want.
Or yes,
Okay.
and apologies all. Technology is our biggest challenge. Our internet just went down here, but we're back.
All right.
Yeah, so we're going to dig a lot more into these opportunity principles, but the kind of quick takeaway here is that there are specific interventions that companies can take to help build that bridge for that incredible pool of talent that has just been systemically disconnected from the good jobs that we know are actually persistently hard for companies to fill. And the inability to fill those positions can really start to impact our company's success and kind of US economic competitiveness. So by bridging that divide, we really start to create that win-win. Next slide. So who do we mean when we're talking about opportunity talent? It's a phrase that we've been throwing around a lot already this morning. And it is both a broad and diverse group of people. And I've included a list of folks that fall into this category. I think the kind of couple key themes here is that there is overlap between these categories. So for example, you could have a veteran who may have also experienced homelessness. The list goes on. Kind of two, this is not an exhaustive list of subgroups. I'm sure kind of as you're looking at this list, additional subgroups are popping to mind, but kind of the general rule of thumb here is that, folks that have persistently faced systemic barriers to accessing education and good jobs. And then third, I think really important to note that Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color, often referred to as BIPOC, are overrepresented amongst all of these categories. And so when we really talk about turning or moving the needle on employment for opportunity talent that is also synonymous with making a difference in equitable employment. So I know that was a whirlwind kind of refresh for those that were with us in February, and kind of a quick run through on definitions for those that are joining for the first time. If you do have any questions on definitions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A function in the chat, and we will address those kind of as we go, and any that we can't address as we go, we'll hold for the Q&A session at the end. So excellent. Thanks so much. Dwight, over to you.
Thank you, Krysta, and thank you for providing all that background information. So let's continue to dive deeper. This is an incredibly important question to think about. Given that the American businesses have millions of unfulfilled jobs, as we talked about with the opportunity divide, and there are millions of highly motivated and talented young adults in America who want these opportunities, how would you go about developing and nurturing a pipeline of opportunity talent? Where would you start? In the chat, there's a link to a Mentimeter WordStorm. If you click on that and you start populating, 1 to 3 words or phrases that describe, where would you begin? What would you start doing? And we'll populate that up, and then we'll talk about that as those words come in. So again, click on the link in the chat, and then 1 to 3 words or phrases where you would begin to build and nurture a pipeline of opportunity talent. Great, thank you, Simon, for putting that in there as well. And I think we'll have the WordStorm coming up, but contacting local organizations, that mean being in contact with some of these populations, incredible. That's right. Building partnerships, broaden. So keep populating information in there. Go to the source. Similar to what Simon mentioned, is just contacting local organizations that have the connections within the local communities, sponsors, explore. Great list. And we can keep apprenticeships, like we'll be talking more about apprenticeships, sponsorships, mentoring. So would someone like to comment on what they put in either Mentimeter or in chat? If you do, just go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll pull you up mute. So we just want to hear more of what you meant by some of the phrases there.
Looks like Jack has his hand up. Jack.
Hey, yeah, so one thing, so I put in there about sponsorships or sponsors. A lot of times we think about mentors and how important mentors are, and we look at those. But how do we start transitioning mentors into sponsors and people in the business community that can actually take somebody under their wing and shepherd them through a career path into an actual job and sponsor them from jobs? Dwight, kind of like what you were describing earlier. And so I think it's a little bit of a shift in kind of how you think about and the types of relationships that you want to nurture. And I think apprenticeships are a really good launching pad for that. So if you think about apprenticeships as a stepping stone towards identifying a sponsor relationship and then figuring out how to navigate your way through, potentially could open up some interesting opportunities and broaden the pipeline.
That's great. And I like how you mentioned, Jack, the difference between a mentorship and a sponsorship, right? Someone mentoring you is there, coming alongside you, helping you through those areas of focus. And a sponsorship is someone that just comes alongside you and then like helps you with that new job, that next career, that what you want to do, and they're vouching for you. So great analogy. Anybody else? One more, we'll take one more. I know it's not a shy group. All right, if we don't have another one, we'll keep moving through. But I think, you know, one of the things too that I just saw mentioned is colleges, universities, workforce organizations are a great way, and still, and as well as like the talent source, like going into organizations that have connections with the underrepresented talent that we're looking for. So thank you and appreciate that. And we're gonna be doing this a couple times. So get used to raising your hand. We're gonna try and make this as interactive as possible, especially since we're virtual. Okay, so can you go to the next slide? Some of what you mentioned in the chat are things that are covered in these opportunity employment principles. Krysta shared this earlier with the stepping stone manner to bridge the opportunity divide. Over the past several years, Grads of Life has worked with its research partners and clients to develop 6 opportunity employment principles and their associated research-based best practices. It turns out that there's a lot that companies can and are already doing, as you already mentioned in this last session, doing to build, develop, expand, and improve talent pipelines for opportunity talent. When we look at these principles, it's also not just focused on hiring the right talent and getting them in, but it's also promotion, retention, and expanding the opportunities for them. So each one of these principles, there's 6 of them, they have 8 practices associated with it. So we're not going to go through all 48 today, but briefly, I just want to mention like what each one of these opportunity principles are. So the first one, a culture of inclusion and belonging. So is the company committed and accountable for DE&I? Do the employees have a clear understanding of how their work connects to the company's mission? The one below that, minimize barriers to assessing roles. Does the company eliminate degree requirements and other credentialing that are not necessary for the job? Do they focus on skills and competencies? Do you remove candidate names, gender identifiers from application materials before review to minimize biases? And what I'm mentioning is a couple of practices that are underneath each one. A data-driven approach to equity. Does the company conduct an employee engagement survey results disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and gender to address well-being, satisfaction, and inclusion? Does the company set and share goals and progress for achieving racial and gender diversity among workforce, senior leadership, and the board? The next one, family sustaining wages and benefits for all employees. This is focused on retention and advancement. Is there a commitment to paying all employees a living wage for the metro area in which the company operates? Is there affordable health care, supplemental benefits packages? Does it develop partnerships with local community resources to provide access to culturally relevant social services supports? And then the 5th one is proactive and intentional recruitment. So the top right is like, you know, where are you sourcing talent? Like we just saw there before. Who are you using as your talent providers? Do you offer paid work experiences for opportunity talent, such as shadowing? Is there sponsorships, mentorship, mentoring? Is there internships available for opportunity talent? And one we're going to dive a little deeper into is systems that support the on-job success and ongoing professional development. Well, it's not just focused on bringing the talent in, but it's about retention and promotion for the talent. So before we jump into that, I'm curious, you know, are any of your companies that you're currently engaged with, what of these employment principles, opportunity employment principles, do you currently utilize? So if you can put it in the QA, or if you want to raise your hand and express like one thing we're doing is X, that'd be fantastic to hear that. So you put it in the chat room, or I'm sorry, in the chat or Q&A, either one, but mainly Q&A. you want to raise your hand and just come off mute. So again, what are one of the principles that your company's already engaged in?
Dwight, it sounds like we've got a shy group this morning. That's okay. I'll invite us to continue on in the interest of time. $20 minimum wage. Fantastic.
Oh, Camille, love that. Love that. Culture of inclusion and belonging. Simon, I mean, I just invite you. Can you come off mute just for a second and just, or can we bring Simon off mute for a second just to have him talk about the culture of inclusion and belonging?
Yes.
Hi. I mean, here at WSP, we've had a strong engagement for diversity and inclusion over the last, both corporate-wise and in our DC area offices over the last year and a half or so, with like an 18-month plan and different action items. So I'm not sure about the other aspect, but at least that we're really moving forward with.
Okay, fantastic. And I think it starts with the plan, right? And as you said, and I'm sure we'll hear more from Camille on this later too, it starts with the plan and building the plan and then executing the plan. As you said, like Simon, it's 18 months in, so it's not going to be a quick plan, but it's something that's set forth and then you keep yourself accountable to it. So I appreciate sharing that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. So a deeper dive into the systems that support on-job success and ongoing professional development. One of the things here that we've talked about, not just the recruiting piece, but the promotion and retention of opportunity talent. So 3 of the 8 practices associated with this are focused on the needs of the ongoing training and access for advancement, so opportunity talent can grow in their careers. There is like focus on the growth and skill building. So is there job shadowing, other programs within the organization that they have access to? Is there tuition assistance? And are the employees aware of the tuition assistance to help them get additional credentialing or degrees to move into other positions within the company? So these practices meet the employees where they are and help them grow and develop in the company over time. It turns out that these practices also improves employees' performance and also helps with the retention, knowing that they can continue to move up within the company. And so what we're going to do now is shift a little bit to the benefits of opportunity talent and being an opportunity employer. Can you go to the next slide? And we're going to breeze through a couple of these slides quickly. So the first slide is focused on business benefits of diversity, and then we'll talk about benefits of opportunity talent. So there was a study done in 2019 by McKinsey that found more diverse companies outperformed their peers. For example, companies with greater gender diversity at senior leadership, so again, this is focused on senior leadership, outperformed their peers by 25% in profitability. Companies with more racial diversity in senior leadership roles outperformed their peers by 36%. But business benefits are not just felt in companies with more diverse leadership, it's also felt at the opportunity talent. You can go next. So this slide talks about like what 3, and these are just 3 examples of companies that are looking at business benefits focused on retention. Lifespan, which is a healthcare company, found that Europe interns, and as Krysta mentioned earlier, Europe is our parent company, and they focus on 18 to 24-year-olds, helping them find a career within a year at a Fortune 1000 company. So Europe interns stayed twice as long than traditional hires. So in fact, they stayed 37 months versus 18 months for traditional hires. The Gap has an initiative called The Way Onward, and they found that their employees, when they hired them through this initiative, they stayed twice as long than traditional hires. The Gap, The Way Onward initiative is a program designed to train and hire diverse young adults to work within the Gap stores. And Expeditors, a logistics company, found that employers hired through the internship program they have a program designed to increase diversity, had turnover rates that were 5 times lower than employees sourced through traditional routes. We all know the cost of hiring new talent, and not just hiring them, but the cost of getting them trained and up to speed. So this is incredible savings for the company by looking at opportunity talent. If you can go to the next slide. Another way that we look at is the intangibles, or the characteristics that the opportunity talent bring into the job. So they're creative, problem solvers, they have an entrepreneurial spirit, and these are skills that are born through life experience. These are skills that really might not show up on a traditional resume that you see. So while we call these skills intangibles, these traits intangibles, they're really tangible, and the results are measurable. It's just not addressed by traditional resumes or application processes. So in the following short video, Deval Patrick, the former governor of Massachusetts, discusses these qualities in relation to Year Up, our parent nonprofit. You want to roll it, please?
What really makes America great? What makes America great is that we pair our powers with something intangible. The only nation in human history organized around a handful of civic ideals of equality, of opportunity, and fair play. They're interdependent. That is what makes this country unique and special. And in neighborhoods all over this country, there are people with just as much creativity, just as much imagination, just as much ambition, who haven't had their chance at the American dream. And keeping faith with that dream is what draws a lot of us to Year Up.
So as you can see, there's a lot of talent that the young adults bring in. And again, as we said earlier, and we'll say this over and over again, talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. As we go into the last slide, it's important to note the persistence of the opportunity divide. It's actually growing as a result of the pandemic. So if you can go to the next slide. That means that America is not as equal a society as our nation's values espouse. So that divide continues to grow. And so because of that existence, it compels us to act. And businesses can play an incredibly important role in developing a more equitable and just society by enacting some of the proven practices that build equity through employment. So what we're going to do, and just being mindful of the time, we're going to, if you go to the next slide, we have 3 case examples here, and we're going to skip the 3 case examples. One was with the GAP, This Way Onward initiative that was launched in 2017. You can go to that. I just want you to read some of the results there. So we're going to skip this because we want to make sure that we have enough time to talk live with Zuzana and Camille on the initiatives they're doing. The second one was with, you can go to the next slide, with JPMC. And this is a program they piloted in 2015. And here's some of the results that they have. And it was focused on people with autism and the autism spectrum, and what they did to, they changed their application process in order to meet the needs of these talented folks. And last slide is on Year Up. And these are some of the results of Year Up. And we'll talk a little more about Year Up, but what I want to do is really go to, while these are the benefits of across those 3 companies of hiring opportunity talent, I want to go and click on the video that shows a Year Up alumni speaking about their lives and work since graduating. So it's not just as they come in, but as they graduate as well. So if you can click on the link, that'd be great.
I am a former foster youth, and in the state of Massachusetts, less than 10% of former foster youth will go to college, and my dream was to get a degree.
My dad owns his own business, but it wasn't always profitable. I come from very humble beginnings, and I had a lack of resources.
I was seeing a lot of my fellow classmates who were graduating, struggling, moving back home, weren't able to find jobs.
I graduated from high school early, but because I had a child, I had to work a lot. I was on whatever government assistant programs were out there.
They told me, hey, we have an interview for Accenture. I got there and I was like, I want to hit the ground running. And after that first month, I was #1 technician for most tickets closed in our office and #2 in the nation. I said, once I get to a certain place, I will give back. As soon as I got hired on, I started to train the interns who came after me, and to be a part of now the Opportunity Society, and to know that I'm actively closing the opportunity divide through like my contributions and my efforts is just so humbling.
Now, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, at the time she was our city councilor, our core values aligned so much, and I remember interviewing with her. It was a long process, super nerve-wracking, but I got in. And so I've been with her since 2016. And now that she is in Congress, I am her executive assistant for her district office. I got what I needed out of Year Up. It was great. They definitely helped me. Everything aligned just way too perfectly.
Year Up exposed me to so many different kinds of people, so many experiences.
I got a chance to be the intelligent woman that had bright ideas and that could speak up and share her dreams and aspirations without question of, am I worthy?
No intention of pursuing my PhD, but I feel like it was just the right choice for me.
To the donors, I tell them, you are contributing to such an amazing mission that is changing people's lives.
Thank you. And those were just 4 of the incredible young adults that have come through Year Up. One of the things I just want to mention before we shift to our panelists is, not just Year Up, but other organizations too. A couple things they mentioned in the video is it provided exposure, it provided experience. Like now that young woman is going after a PhD, we have someone in politics, and that's probably something they might not have imagined before they came into Year Up. And lastly, it said that it created intent of bright ideas. Now, I don't think Year Up did that. I think Year Up just gave her the opportunity to express herself, right? It was always there. And just think about like how many young adults out there that just given the opportunity can be able to help your company move forward on the business benefits that you have. So with that, I'm going to shift into our panelists. I would like to take Zuzana and Camille. Thank you for taking time to share your thoughts, experience, and expertise with the members today of the Board of Trade. First, I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, and then we'll go into some questions. And also, as you hear them speaking, please in the Q&A, put your questions in there as well, because we'll have time at the end to ask them. So we'll start with Zuzana. Zuzana Steen, she serves as the Academic and Community Relations Director at Micron in Virginia. Micron is a leader in innovative memory and storage solutions with 1,600 employees in Northern Virginia and over 40,000 employees globally. Micron is a top exporter in our Commonwealth, the 4th largest semiconductor company in the world. Zuzana is charged with fostering strategic partnerships throughout the Commonwealth. Among other roles, Zuzana serves as the Vice Chair of the Board of the Northern Virginia Commonwealth Community College, NOVA, where she has helped establish critical workforce development partnerships. Welcome, Zuzana.
Thank you.
And then Camille John serves as the Enterprise Co-Lead for Bank of America's strategy on underrepresented ethnic talent within the Global Diversity and Inclusion Organization. She also has accountability for the inclusion strategy and external partnerships, and with developing strategies to build a culture of inclusion to support the engagement and retention of this talent. Welcome, Camille.
Thank you.
So the remainder of this session will have the following format. In a moment, I'm going to pose a couple of questions to the group about opportunity employment practices and the benefits of these practices at the company. In the final 10 minutes of our time together, we'll open the discussion up to the audience, and you all can ask questions in the Q&A Zoom feature. Please note, if we have a high volume of questions, which I expect, some of you have been quiet to come off mute, but I expect like the floodgates to open up in the Q&A. We'll try to bundle those questions by topic so that we can address as broader way questions as possible. So with that, I'll start with Zuzana. So Zuzana, we know that Micron has been very active in developing leading models for secondary, post-secondary, and industry partnerships to help hire and retain opportunity talent. Can you tell us a bit about 3 of your flagship programs?
Yes, thank you, Dwight. So our 3 flagship programs really are with NOVA, the Northern Virginia Community College, that led to establishing of mechatronics program, which is a certification and associate degree in mechatronics, which is mechanical and electronics put together. And also next one is YERUP partnership that I will really focus on later on in our panel conversation. And the third one has been veterans. So we have Veterans Hiring Initiative in partnership with Virginia Values Veterans and also with the Veterans Employment Initiative of the Northern Virginia Technology Council, as well as the Virginia Chamber of Commerce.
Fantastic, fantastic. So three great programs. So when we speak when we spoke in preparation for this call, you thought sharing more about your partnership with the YERUP would be most valuable for the peers on this call. With that in mind, can you share some more details about the partnership, including what was the impetus for starting the partnership? What problem or challenge is it helping solve for your company? And what have the early stage results been?
Sure. So back in 2018, Micron announced an expansion of our fabrication facility here in Manassas. And that was with an investment of $3 billion and creation of 1,100 new positions. The positions are for engineers and technicians. When we were preparing for the expansion, when we were having the initial conversations, we really had to create a strategy for short, mid, and long-term development of pool of talent. So that was really going to the K-12 partners, as well as higher education, such as the community colleges, as well as universities, to have that talent pool available so that we can expand. So really what the challenge was for us, to fill the technician positions. So that really, that's where the YERUP program and also in partnership with NOVA kind of came into place.
Fantastic, fantastic. And so what have been some of the results so far?
Right, so we have had, there are 3 cohorts of YERUP students who either started working at Micron as our interns or are slated to start. Actually, the 3rd cohort is about to start in August of this year. So 10 of the 13 initial students in first cohort, they have been extended and they have been really converted into our own Micron technician interns, and they are being considered for full-time technician positions when they kind of complete the term at the end of this spring. And then the 2nd cohort started in February of this year. And as I mentioned, the 3rd cohort is slated to start in August.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Meeting the business needs through opportunity talent. Love that. One last question, then question for Camille. So having done the work of launching this successful partnership, what lessons can you share with other companies that are launching similar partnerships? Like what ingredients have been critical? What lessons have you learned? What are some of those things?
So what I have, and I was involved ever since the initial conversations, and then have been seeing this program through. The key for us was to communicate with YERUP clearly about the expectations for our positions, so that when they go out and recruit the unemployed or underemployed young adults, they can clearly represent us and explain to the students what we need, what talent we need, what aptitude and skills they would need to build. And then also I had to communicate with my colleagues, with our internal stakeholders, with all of them, to really prep everything for this YERUP model, which was new to our company. We had to adjust many systems internally for the success of this program as well as have a constant line of communication between supervisors of the Year Up students who are at Micron and the Year Up program managers. That really has been a key. And finally, I would add is our company has been well positioned to take in these students, this opportunity talent, many of whom are from the underrepresented groups. So we do have a strong DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy internally. So we have employee resource groups. So now we have our Black Employee Network, and we also have Hispanic professionals who are specifically involved with the Year Up students when they came to Micron. They help share with them about their careers, that they help answer their questions. And this is in addition to the mentorship programs that we have and coaching and sponsorship programs that we have, once the students will become our full-time employees. And Dwight, I would also add that we actually have all of the employer practices that you mentioned, that you had on your slide, the principle number 6, manager training, focus on growth and skill building, as well as tuition assistance. So all of these things have already been in place for us to implement the Year Up program at Micron successfully.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that, Zuzana. And I got one more question. I'll come back to you after we talk to Camille. If there's no questions coming up, I'll have another one for you. But thank you for that, and great that partnership is going well. So Camille, thank you so much for being here today as well. So to kick us off, can you share about some of the work Bank of America is doing to become an opportunity employer and help close the opportunity divide?
Sure. So thanks for having me, Dwight, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I was, like Zuzana, very excited to see that we checked so many boxes as an organization, and I'd be remiss if I didn't really start with mentioning that a lot of this is driven by really our purpose and really being a company, and our main strategy is really about responsible growth. So making sure that we're doing good while we're doing well. And that's really a core tenet in what we do. So when I think about those programs, one thing that comes to mind is our Pathways program, where we targeted hiring more than 10,000 individuals from low to moderate income neighborhoods over 5 years. We've actually surpassed that goal because we were targeting doing that by 2023, and we surpassed that ahead of our commitment. With that Pathways program, we have been working with not-for-profit partners to provide skills training and career pathways for the members in those communities, and really preparing them for ongoing opportunities within the bank. And so when we think about that career program, many of those participants are trained through our academy, and that, which is actually award-winning for us, where we do a lot of coaching and development for client-facing teammates. And so that's accessed by more than 45,000 of our employees every year. And it provides really an investment in those employees from day one. So we got to make sure we provide those skills so that it can help to provide a long-term, the foundation for a long-term career with us. And then when we think about more targeted development, we have things like our credit college, and continuing to provide that virtual instructor training to be able to provide that additional support. So you're not just getting trained for your current role, but what's going to help you drive a longer career with us over time. And so when I think of some of that, we're really, really proud of that, as well as our veterans program, and then our program for our persons with disabilities, where we have more than 300 employees in our support services organization. And they have different cognitive disabilities, but they actually provide services for all of our lines of business and are in various locations throughout the US. So really, really excited about those results.
That's fantastic, Camille. Since you've already achieved the Career Pathways 10,000 goal, is there a new goal coming up that the bank is thinking about?
So we haven't published a new goal, but I think it's just to continue outperforming ourselves, right? So how are we really now focused on, one, making sure that we are driving out what we call our inclusive manager program, so that we can really provide the additional skills for managers, because we're asking so much of our leaders, but making sure that they see that inclusion is really how we act. How are you helping to drive that culture of inclusion, and thinking about that in all areas of the career life cycle or employee life cycle. And so while we haven't published a new goal, I think it's really how are we doubling down, because so much of this, while we're not talking about culture today, is really culture is critically important, right? We can continue to provide transparency on our results, which we do. And many of you can look at our human capital report, which we published for the second year last year, that shows all of our stats, where we are in terms of our hiring and everything around our great place to work culture. But if we're not continuing to provide more about that culture and continue to drive that culture, you won't retain your people, which is also critically important, because what are people going to find when they come to work for you? And so that makes it easier for us to really attract diverse talent, is really making sure that we're really primarily also focus on the culture as well.
Great, thank you. One last question, and then I'm gonna go back to Zuzana. What are some lessons that you've learned along the way that you want to share with your peers? And also, like the Bank of America is huge, right? There might not be people on this that work at companies that are as large. What are some lessons for them? Like, where do they start?
So I think first, I'll start with the second part of the question. It's really about making sure everyone is owning your 20 square feet. So even if you don't have our scale, part of why we publish our results is to help with the influence, so everyone can determine, for what I have available to me, how am I going to create programs, things that allow me to use the power that I do have to drive results. And so I think that's one thing that's critically important, is that we all have agency. So how are you leveraging that as an organization to figure out how you're going to, one, drive that culture? I put in the chat earlier about our $20 minimum wage, which we did a year ahead of our commitment. And so while we're huge, we do those things because there are other organizations that can do that, whether or not you have the scale or not. And then in terms of lessons learned, I think one of the main things has really been continuing to help with the manager training, which Zuzana mentioned earlier, because it's not about changing, I think, the expectations for your employees, which we did more of it as an economic mobility play, not just the talent play, right? What are we doing in the communities that where we live and work? But it's really about making sure that we're providing that connectivity to those employees, so that when you come in, you can feel the culture. And so when I think about the pandemic, that was one area, because everybody was working from home. We had 85% of our employees going to a work from home status, and we had to reskill employees that couldn't continue in their existing roles. So to help with things like the Paycheck Protection Program. But it's really, how are you continuing to create that connection when you're not in the office, right? The office was the great equalizer before. Now you're working from home. I may not have had the skills or connectivity to leaders or others that were mentor. And so that was one thing, is how could we create expectations to continue to have that connectivity with employees, so they know who they can reach out to, because you can feel like you're a little bit on your own island when you're working from home. So I think that was one of the lessons learned for last year, is how to mobilize people quickly so that they can continue not to feel isolated. They know where to go to ask for help. And then having managers really fill in the gap in terms of really not changing expectations, but really providing additional opportunity, communication, so that you could provide support as everyone's been really navigating through these challenging times.
Thank you. I was trying to get myself. Appreciate that. And again, like you mentioned, like everyone owns their own, I know what you call it, you said square.
They're 20 square feet. So I
Exactly.
can influence what is right around me. And I think
Right.
we forget that sometimes. And we're looking for others to do all the work, figure out what you have within your control, to be able to create change.
Love that. So Zuzana, I got a question for you that's in the chat. It says, what are some strategies for recruiting opportunity talent in a virtual environment?
That's a very good question. So I would actually look at it as opportunities. What are the opportunities in the virtual world? We have been able to connect a lot more of our team members from the different employee resource groups with the groups of students that were slated to come in. So let's say the Year Up students, as I mentioned, the 3 groups, we have had our employees speak virtually over Zoom to the groups of the students and answer the questions and share about their careers and what they had to overcome and how they grew within our company or previous companies that they were with. And so that was something that we took advantage of, really connecting more of our employees whose role probably is not to be hiring managers, but we were able to bring them virtually to them. And also we've done some mock interviews for the students as well, so that they can interview well when Micron is actually interviewing them for even internship positions or the full-time positions. So we've been doing this with K through 12 and higher education all along throughout this pandemic and these restrictions, but specifically with the Year Up students as well. I mean, in more sessions than we could have done in person.
Great. And then, continue to put other questions into the Q&A so we can ask our panelists, both Camille and Zuzana. So other questions you have, please submit those. Camille, same question to you. What are some of your strategies for recruiting opportunity talent in a virtual environment?
So we have really continued, I want to first say that we continue to re-recruit our employees, right? So making sure that you, again, I go back to that experience and really providing first that connectivity, because your employees become your best source in some ways of providing additional referrals to new talent. So first is really making sure we're wrapping our arms around our existing talent. One thing I would say last year, because part of why you guys are having this series is we're in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, as well as really, navigating through the remainder of this global health crisis. And so part of that has been having our Let's Get Real conversations, where really with the murder of George Floyd, and it was a platform we already had, but we expanded and had over 300 official conversations. So really talking about the elephant in the room on different aspects and topics with over 165,000 of our employees. And so that again speaks to how people are feeling. We continue with our partnerships with organizations like Year Up to continue with the recruitment. When I think about our veterans platform, for example, and our talent acquisition team there, they continue to have relationships with organizations where they're going out and, talking to veterans who may not have ever thought about working with a bank. Right. So you're just doing that on a virtual platform. And so many of our colleagues are serving as part of a diverse hiring slate, right? And a diverse hiring interview panel to speak to our veterans, see if there's, connectivity, and then putting them into various programs so they can get some experience and rotate through different areas of different lines of business to be able to do that. So I think a lot of it has been really transforming what we're doing more into a virtual platform and virtual sense, both from the veterans. We do that also when we think about our interns as well, which we hired many of our interns and maintained those commitments even through the pandemic.
That's great. Thank you, and Camille. So just in looking at time, we're gonna close out our session today. Amazing comments from both of you on, and I think it starts with the culture, right? Culture of inclusion and making sure, because if we don't have the right culture, then the retention, you can bring as many employees as you want in, but all of a sudden those doors are going to open back out for them. So cultures is so important. And both of you mentioned that the training through one of the opportunity employment principles of manager training, like, and ensuring that you have the manager training available. You mentioned, Camille, the inclusive manager training that happens through the academy. And then also, Zuzana, you talked about like ensuring that there was communication and manager training for opportunity talent as they're coming in and making sure they're on board. So a lot of those are like incredible pieces for everyone to take away. Like, okay, what do I do like when I go back? Like, what's one thing that I can do? So I appreciate your time today. Wish we had like 30 more minutes. I got a couple more questions, but like we'll have to come back to that. So thank you for sharing your experiences. So Phil, if you can put up the final slides. So just final thoughts today is, so thank you to, again, Cigna, Comcast, and EY for sponsorship of this program. Thank you, a special thanks to the Board of Trade, Jack, for the partnerships in this important work. And we hope that you take away a couple concepts from this, right? Talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not, as we heard about. Multiple benefits becoming an opportunity employer, as both Bank of America and Micron have done. And there's a critical role that you can play in addressing systemic racism and creating that equity through employment. You don't have to start from scratch. So if you go to the next slide, there's an opportunity for you to engage in the opportunity employment principles. And like it's, there's a link there that we'll put in the chat, and also would just consider taking that assessment. It's called Opportunity Navigator. It takes less than 15 minutes and can tell you where you're at, like with the principles and practices that are there. And also, we'd just love to hear your feedback on today's session. There's a SurveyMonkey link in there as well that we'd love to hear how well we did today, what we can improve on, what would you like to hear about in future sessions. So again, 2 links in there. One is to give us your feedback on the session. The other one is a link to the Opportunity Navigator. And if you need to reach out to either Krysta or myself, our email addresses are there. So thank you for the time today. And I'm gonna pass it back to Jack to close us out.
All right, great, thanks, Dwight. That was an interesting conversation, appreciated it. And I know there's a lot of other topics that we could get into today, and we will as we go forward, so stay tuned. So Krysta, Zuzana, and Camille, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts. There's a lot of work to do, and we'll get there. I want to thank everybody that joined us. Check our website for information on upcoming sessions and conversations. Also, we'll have a recording of this one available to you. And again, thanks to our sponsors, Cigna, Comcast, and EY. And with that, I'm going to close us out right at 11, and everyone have a great day.